although it feels like Wednesday because yesterday was a double day, but still a Monday. It's Rose Kaz, the femme founder of LBI, the Backstage Pass, and coming soon, a podcast. But I don't want to spill the beans yet. I definitely want to talk to Abby about that before I tell you about it. But nonetheless, today we are having another small talk with big thinkers, our last of the series we've been doing all week, leading up to our big 1-year party for the Backstage Pass. Last year on October 19th, we launched this super cool place. If you haven't been there, I suggest you come backstage, particularly tomorrow night. If you are a thought leader, industry disruptor, or business activist that is identifying as a female, come backstage, click the link, and I'll see you there at 8 p.m. tomorrow night. But first, today, I am talking with my dear friend, Abi Green. How are you today, Abby?
Oh, I am well. How are you doing?
I'm good. And I'm so glad. It's been forever and way too long since we've connected. Abby does a ton of things in the political sphere. Most notably right now, she's a campaign manager. And so I wanted to talk with Abby specifically, not just about politics or politicking, if you like the verb, but also about why you should care. We've got some elections coming up in T-minus, like 20 days, Abby? You've probably got the official down to the minute counter.
I do, if you'd like it, yes.
Yes.
Obviously, there's early voting in lots of places throughout the country. I'm lucky enough to live in Maryland. I know Colorado has it, but official election day is November 8th. Yes.
Okay, so we're getting to crunch time, and I want to talk about not only midterms and why they matter outside of the big 4-year, where I was like, that's when I'm really supposed to vote. When it's like, well, how about you vote all the time? But also why it's really important to know about who your candidates are and hopefully push more female forward candidates, and not just candidates, but policy forward. Hello, Roe versus Wade. So a lot of these things are buzzwords this campaign season. So we'll just dig into a few. But Abby, tell us a little bit why in the friggin' world did you get into politics in the first place, and how are you enjoying it?
Sure. So yes, I was born in New Hampshire, and for those of you who don't know, that is the first primary state every 4 years for the presidential election. So going back since a very long time, there's a lot of money put into their press. The candidates get a lot of attention. It's really kind of the only thing going on in January every 4 years for them to cover. So pretty much since birth, I thought it was every American's privilege that they got to meet every single presidential candidate before they decided who they voted for. I mean, I have my whole life. That's crazy. I thought that everybody did. So I thought that democracy was doing really well. So I think that kind of got me involved in the beginning. And then really the place it started, I was brand new to a new high school in New Hampshire. And the pretty popular girl turned around and said, hey, will you come to this rally for my mom? I can't go. And I promised her I'd find people. And like, when you're new and the pretty popular girl says, come to something, you say yes. She said, my mom is running for governor. And I laughed and said, well, I mean, first of all, women can't be in politics. Moms can't be, definitely. And women can't be governor because no woman ever had. I love that I said that because obviously it showed what I knew about it. I went and watched the now Senator Shaheen speak. Then she was running for governor, won governor, went on to be senator. And I believe during her second term, the entire delegation for the Senate and Congress was all female for the first time. So that really lit this fire under me. And I thought, great, you find great people, you work with great people, and you win. And then I went about 15 years not winning. So I say that to say, I think a lot of people have just newly gotten involved, a ton of women, a ton of people of color, young people, especially since the Roe situation, whatever point you want to talk about it. And so I want to say that, first of all, is that if you're part of these things and you've just gotten involved and maybe your candidate, your thing, whatever, doesn't win, just know that's part of the job. And I promise that if you stay involved, that win will be so much sweeter because of what you've done to build to that moment. So what I'm doing right now, I want to clarify a little bit of something that you said, Rose. I was a campaign manager until July. I had the wonderful privilege of working for a woman named Jacqueline Manger, and she ran for county council here in our county, Montgomery County, just outside Washington, D.C. So you can imagine if most of the people that actually work in politics then go back to their homes, they're still pretty political. So it was a very interesting race. We ended up coming in second, and it was her absolute first time doing anything. So I think that shows quite a bit. And out of this potentially 15-person council, when we started the race, there was one woman on council. There are now 6 that will be going through the general. And yes, these are all Democrats now, while there is a general no one is really running in the general. So these women, and I'm going to get to see them tonight and say great job. And these women have been activated in so many different ways. One, she's a lawyer, happened to marry someone who's into politics, and that got her interested and more involved. Another one, she actually heard that, I'm going to leave this vague, but someone she really didn't appreciate from the last administration was eating at a sandwich place near her house. And she went and she told him what she thought of him, and someone recorded while she's holding the baby in tow, right? I'm a mom and I care about these things. She ended up going viral, and that helped her win this race. And now she's an elected official.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this is a very interesting place. And I'd say even more, I was talking about this with someone yesterday when people wonder, why am I talking about, the January 6th insurrection and the Bachelorette? Like, what are you doing, Abby? These are not all equally important to your life. What I want to say is, for those of us that live right in this ring outside DC, the last year and a half has been a challenge because those were our firefighters and our police officers. And so I do want people to think about the fact that, everything really is local. Everything really does affect real people. And I got that because of this random job I accepted with this wonderful woman, Jacqueline. Turns out her husband is the chief of the Capitol Police. So that issue went from, this terrifying thing that did happen, and I saw this too. Oh, he's the guy who's got to clean up the mess. And what a fascinating person to talk to, someone who's trying so hard. And outside of the DC world, you probably don't know his name because he's not a glamorous person, but he's working really well, really hard to make sure that we're all safer. So it's been a really interesting experience. And now I've just jumped on with our current congressman in Maryland 6, David Trone. It is a re-election campaign, and I could say a million wonderful things about him. But I think if you're not that involved in politics and you are thinking about voting, the most effective thing I can tell you is that his opponent, not making this up, his opponent has a political theory that what we should do to make sure we know who has disease in this country is tattoo them. If they are positive for disease.
Not a good idea before.
And this is not specific to adults. So newborn babies should also be tattooed with any diseases that they have. This is literally the opponent I'm running against. So when you're wondering somehow how I get this motivation, a lot of times it is working for great people like David, for Barack Obama, for Joe Biden, for Jacqueline Manger, for so many great people. Sometimes I'm equally motivated by who I don't want in office and who I do not want making decisions about my body or my child or my family. So it's not always the greatest motivation, but the reality is there. And sometimes fear can also be a motivator and really turn into something positive.
Gosh, wow, that whole last little bit there is that's a lot to unpack in its own considerations. Not to mention your incredible experience thus far. And so I like how you point out like having the knowledge of who we want to be elected, but also equally important to know why we perhaps don't want the opponent we're trying to keep out of office. I had a really interesting conversation with our mutual friend, Tamara Shealy Johnson, from back in the day at Clubhouse. Yeah, she's doing well. She didn't advance to the Senate seat, unfortunately, but in the chat, which we will air on our Money, Sex, Politics podcast, dropping tomorrow, Tamara and I talked a little bit, obviously about politics in this session, about if democracy is really even of the demos, right? Like if all of this like drive to like go vote and get activated because of what we're watching go down in Georgia, like play-by-play moments. And so stay tuned for that episode because it was really, she's like, sorry to be like the bearer of bad news, but I'm a little burnt out and upset with democracy right now. And in fact, if anybody's paying attention to Georgia, there is a nice reach across the aisle, a bipartisan, finally, even if it is through a lawsuit, coming at it being like, what is actually going on here? But I wanted you, Abby, if you would, to speak to, because you've been so involved with the machine of politics for most, it sounds like, of your life, what you've seen, how democracy, like as you mentioned, right? It's local. It is actually hyper local, even if it feels like it's far away. What you actually see happening when people show up to the polls, when you see your collaborators in, this sort of, I think of you all in politics as sort of like masters of ceremonies, production people, like behind the curtain of politics. And I just wonder what that feeling is of actual democracy, because after the chat with Tamara, I was like, see, this takes me back to like my poli-sci days in college where I was like, man, this is so jacked. Are we even supposed to care? Like, should we just like go drink rum in the sunset, like on some faraway beach and like never give a flip back? But then again, I go register to vote, and I get out there. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a real thing, that it's hard. It's hard to want to be involved. It's hard to stay involved, and it's hard to come back if you've taken a break. But I think that life cycle is necessary, and we all go through it. Um, there are certain times where we just can't care, and we're not any good to the cause. And if we were to volunteer or get involved, we'd just yell at people and be a jerk. In that case, go drink your rum, go watch your Real Housewives, do whatever it is. You have to recoup. You're no good to your job, your family, your life, yourself, if you're not yourself and you don't have the bandwidth. I did go through periods of burnout having done this, every 2 and 4 years for so long. That happens. So forgive yourself for that. And I think especially now, we've really been through a lot of political trauma. I don't think Americans are quite as used to that term or that word or that thought, like, oh, politics is this other thing. But it is traumatizing to see and hear and smell and taste and feel around us some of the tension that has, come up over the last few years, and I think was exacerbated just by the challenges of COVID. So I completely get all that. And if you need the space and you're not going to be of any help right now, great. Just bake some cookies and drop them off at a friend who's volunteering, right? That's still wonderful. That's still great. Donate a little bit of money. You can do little things. But if you're ready to go to the next step, or you're just not really sure how to get involved and how, if you're in there, like, does this ever help? Does it ever really make a difference? The only answer is yes. Because if you've never been involved before, then you've never been involved before. No one's ever been in there with your opinions, with your thoughts, and the way you're thinking. And so many of us complain about that government doesn't represent me. It doesn't look like me. It's only going to look like you if you get involved and start running. And I'm not shaming anyone who hasn't. There are so many obstacles, and especially in states like Georgia and others, not just down south, but most of them are down there, to be honest. There are lots of challenges, but they are not insurmountable, and they're the most accessible they've ever been, at least for women, I would say, in this country, and I would say in this world. I'm, again, very glad to be where I am. They offer money. So if you are able to raise in small donations $10,000 in our county, they'll match you $20,000. That's doable, right? It takes work. It takes effort. It's not easy, but you can do that. You can ask your friends for $5, $10, get to 10,000. You have plenty of time to do it. And then they'll double your money. So you have triple that to decide what to do, how you want to get your message out. More and more programs like that are cropping up at the same time. I know many horrible things are happening to elections as well, but there are people out and there are resources out there to help you run and learn more. I also think it's easy to get very overwhelmed by all that's happening. And one thing that was helpful to me, right, while I was working on this, smaller election, while it's a lot of people and it's a lot of money and all that, it's a smaller area. It's just a county race. And, the Roe decision came out, and I just wanted to pull my hair out. I used to be the field director for the National Organization for Women. I was at that moment of exactly what you're saying. I have been doing this so long. Am I really going to spend my whole career fighting for this stupid thing that should already be real? And, but what I was able to do was say, all right, in this little hamlet, this little area that I can control, I can't go everywhere. I can't fix everyone's problems. And we all know that as caring people, we have those moments, but I can fix right here. And I sat down with my candidate and our team, and they all, were just so disgusted. And we sat down and made a plan of, okay, this is, rather than trying to fundraise off this is where we're going to send money. This is where we're going to say smaller groups that help, women who are low income and women of color, things like that. We're going to try to take those resources and put it towards something positive. I don't think we solved any problems. I don't think we fixed the world, but we were able to say, listen, we put out this statement, basically, whoever you are, wherever you are, you're safe here. You are safe here. There is a safe place. And here in Maryland, we're right next to Virginia, West Virginia. We have a lot of people that need help. And at least for that moment, I was like, okay, the people I've worked for, the community I've decided to be in, and that comes with its own privilege. We do have our arms around this little space. Our governor went out and said something. The county council said, anyone seeking help, anywhere in the world, basically, we're here to help. Sometimes you got to think small. And it's not small to the people that you help. It's not small to that teenager who's literally 13 miles down the road and didn't know she could come to Maryland and be safe on a bus, right? Sometimes you can do so much good in these small little areas because your impact can be so deep rather than broad. And don't discount that. Don't think, well, I'm not running for Senate, or I don't have $1 million to donate to something. Think of something that you care about and that is specific to you and that you're passionate about, and you will be amazed at what can happen if you just grab that ball and start running with it.
Totally. I like how you referenced that sort of micro versus macro. And I feel like a lot of times, I mean, all you have to do is like watch the news for like 5 seconds and you could just be like, fuck it, I'm not even, give me the ROM, drive me into the sunset in my Hummer. I don't even, get me out of here, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And the other thing is, and I remember actually it was like one of my last, like my upper level poli-sci classes, I had this crazy, Kalinowski, if you're out there, send smoke signals. This old gun-toting libertarian, this guy. These classes were so intense that even like going to Christmas break on a Friday at 4 o'clock, like the class was packed with people who weren't even in his class, right? But we would be like, I remember one of my friends, Josh Hoffman, was like, so like, why don't I just like flip the bird and drive off into the sunset? And Kalinowski's answer was very similar to yours, and also activating, not just locally, but it's like kind of like, see how your conscience will do with that sitting on the beach with Ron once the hangover comes, right? And essentially the idea being that like hope is very powerful, right? And not just hope from your armchair philosophizer, armchair politician, right? Like it's activating these spaces. And I remember you actually reflected to me once, Abby, on after our April 9th event, right, where we had For the Love of Democracy, and we brought together all these different women from all over the country running for roles of not just political leadership, but I mean, I guess school board can be political as well, right?
Oh,
City
for
council,
sure, for
all these
sure.
different levels of leadership. And you said to me, I think something very similarly is like, you're changing lives, right? And I was like, no, we just had this little thing, right? This little Zoom with like 50, 60 women. But like, it's all it takes is like a small inch for someone else to feel super inspired. And so I want to shout out to Cassidy, your intern, actually, because that connection, and I would love for you to share a little bit about how you made that from the April 9th For the Love of the Democracy event that we put on by the Backstage Pass, is like, it warms my heart every time I think about you, Abby, and the work you're doing, and that then you connected with Cassidy, and then what Cassidy's experience has been through the lens of working with you. And so if you'll just share with our listeners a little bit about that experience, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. So back, it feels like a million years ago. It was in June. Is that what it was?
April 9th.
April. Okay. All right. So I just started with my candidate, Jacqueline Manger, who is just a fantastic, very dynamic person. She spent time on Broadway. She's just one of these people that has a presence. And yeah, there was a lot of women speaking on this. I invited her. She didn't really know. She just learned about me. We were sort of, we knew each other pretty well, but this sort of form was new. And she jumped on. And I mean, every woman on this thing was so inspirational that I was just like taking, like, I want to talk, I want to follow that. What's that book you said? It was, I don't mean that Jacqueline was not special amongst that. I just mean there were so many special, amazing women. But for a certain reason, this young lady, Cassidy, I believe sophomore at the time, in high school, immediately wrote to us during that, found our email address and just said, Jacqueline, there's something that just, I love how you spoke. I need to help. How can I help? It was so specific. Jacqueline was absolutely flattered because even though she has this confident presence, this was her first time doing anything as a candidate. She just announced her the first time. And she's like, this woman, this little girl, young lady over in Michigan who doesn't know anything about Montgomery County. Here we are. How can I help? And so we reached out to Cassidy and she became the #1 phone banker. She made more phone calls than the candidate herself. She'd just sit on our dialer calling people. She learned so much about the county. And we just found all these things in common. So turns out she is a very competitive ice skater. Turns out so was Jacqueline. Like, what are the chances of that? And then when Roe was overturned, one of the first terrifying states was Michigan because of the trigger laws that, if you're not familiar with it, basically once they overturned Roe by the Supreme Court, some really old, like ye oldie laws from like back when a lot of
1870,
like 1870 was going to become law. So when we knew that, we thought right away, okay, again, like I love where I live, but we're not struggling here. This is a great area. They've been able to have a lot of resources. I'm grateful for that. Michigan is a place that does need a lot of help and doesn't have, unfortunately, as many fantastic. There's a lot of great leaders in Michigan, but they need more. There's a lot of cuckoos out there too. And so we were able to fundraise for a local Michigan abortion clinic and use Cassidy was able to tell her own story of this is the future of my future, and by her volunteering for this campaign, we were able to help her from Maryland to do something in Michigan, and therefore even reinforce our message that this isn't just about, let's help women. Women are really suffering. There are women suffering in different places and at different levels. And I was so appreciative of the fact that we'd already had this connection to this person who was doing good in the community. We could highlight her. And she's going to be helping with my current campaign too. And we've stayed in touch, and she's just a very, very cool person. Most of my role right now is recruiting volunteers for the early vote session. So like I was saying, a lot of states give you many, many days to vote. It's smart. It should be convenient, right? Yep. Vote.gov. If you don't know where to vote, go check it out. Voting. I already have my ballot in hand, but in many states it begins in about a week, if not sooner. So I'm just calling through people, and they really are sort of they're reaching that point. Oh, still election season. Oh, what do we have to do? Oh, who's the horrible guy who's running against your candidate? And for so many people, what I'm asking is just go and hang out at an early vote location. It's a school or a rec center or, VFW, whatever the place is. Just hang out. Maybe you have a sign for my candidate or a t-shirt, but the point is just be the eyes and ears on the ground. Just welcome people. As you're sitting there, you'll think of someone you haven't seen. Hey, don't forget to vote. It's open right now. And so many people have said, you know what? Thank you. I can just sit. I I want to say that getting involved can, yes, mean running for office and making 10,000 phone calls. And that's all awesome. And the super type A personalities like Jacqueline and myself and Cassidy, right? That's what we're like. But for some people, you call the local campaign and say how I can help. It might be like, could you bring us some soup? Like there was one guy in my campaign who brought us soup once a week. Did that help democracy? Yes, it did. Did he think that's what he was going to do?
That points to like I think the whole goal of civic engagement. I mean, yes, of course, the big picture is to shift, progress. I mean, there's other people who vote maybe in antiquated focuses ways. I don't know, but the goal is that we see more accessibility for more people and all the wonderful things that I think are on both of our agendas, yours and mine. But also that there's this like piece of engagement with our community, with our neighbors, this thing that we kind of have lost over the years because of some of this divisiveness between, the Republicans, the Democrats, the left and the right, the progressives and the whatever. And I just think your simple call to action on like, just call and see what could be useful. It activates a little bit of ownership in the person who's calling and asking how we can help. And then maybe that's just the gateway drug to like the next level of politicking. And I just want to shout back out to Cassidy real quick as we wrap up. I'm so thrilled that happened. And I also want to make sure that she knows, I'll definitely have to email her, I forgot, but about the dance party tomorrow night. I'm so excited. But also that for Cassidy as a young Black woman in Michigan, right? Like having the connection across over to Maryland to then reflect some of those resources back to Michigan and to show in an otherwise it's not typically visible this way, right? Like we have to start showing this on the daily, that like we have each other's back as women, as humans, right? Had a conversation with Desiree Stevens the other day about why she's not a feminist. And I love this conversation with her because she loves to be like, I'm a humanist because I care about humans, right? It doesn't matter what you have here or there. Like I care about humans. And I just see what that exchange with you and Cassidy and the ongoing collaboration is like a very humanist one that's super important for us to have in as many possible ways. Internship, bringing soup to the polling place or whatever it is. It's like, can you be 5% more human today, right? And so as we wrap up, Abby, tell us how you're going to be 5% more human today, because I know you already do it like at 150% type A, my fellow type A political.
I am. I need to, probably take more of a break from politics, but I will after this election. Yes. So today I'm actually taking some time out from my current campaign to go to an event with those 6 women. I haven't seen them since the election, the 6 women that won, that will be my future county councilors. I love that because, those are who's going to be making the decisions for the schools around here, the roads, the budget, all those things. So I'm going to go and give them a hug of congratulations because I have not been able to see any of them since then. And just keep putting it out there. It sounds so simple, but sometimes you never know who's listening. You never know who you've affected by the way you said something. And if there really is powers of good and evil, right? Let's just pretend that there is. The dark wants you to think you have no power. That is the big fallacy. If we convince you that you have no power, you'll believe it and you'll stay home and you won't get involved. And I get that so many people power is removed from them and they're oppressed and there are more issues and strategies we have to employ. But there are many people who have a lot of power who simply aren't utilizing it. And don't be scared because it's just only better the more people we have we have involved. And be sure to vote. Be sure to vote. It's really not a joke.
That is a great quote. I don't have anything, I can't say anything on top of that because it's so perfect, right? Like if you don't activate your own personal political power, then the big machine, the 1%, the top, whoever is the emperor with no clothes, if you even want to go that far, wins even more. So at the very least, activate so that the emperor looks even more silly because there's more of us, right? I mean, that's literally what democracy, if you break it up, demos means people, we are the people. That's what like the flag, the dollar bill, all this hype says. So like, let's show up, right? So
let's try. And I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, please go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think we have this idea that one time, one world, some people found the perfect democracy and they did it right, and we're holding ourselves up to that. We're doing our best. This is truly an experiment. If you've really studied American law, constitutional, and that stuff, this is a huge experiment, and I wanted to succeed. It is not perfect. There's going to be casualties along the way. It's really hard, but we're doing it a lot better than I think people realize. It's just that hard.
Yeah, and we have to keep practicing. We have to keep reforming and remind the original authors, co-authors, and their descendants that there's now a lot more versions of what democracy looks like, and so we will be amending and iterating and all that jazz. So Abby, I'm so happy to see you just generally as a friend. I'm so glad to see you thriving and doing work that you give a shit about. It's so important that we have humans, people, women particularly, giving a shit about their work. The Great Resignation has allowed us to say, I don't give a fuck about this. And so I appreciate that you give a fuck about this. And thank you for joining on this Down and Dirty 30, small talks with big thinkers. This is the last one of our series. And Abby, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Rose. Loved it.
I'll catch you later. I'm going to tuck you away in the green room and come chat to you in a quick second. But first, I want to tell you all, if you are into any of these conversations that we have had in the last week leading up to our big one-year celebration tomorrow, October 19th, definitely check this out. It's a new fancy web page, how you can get involved. We've got 2 channels now on the LBI network. One is our Fancy Pants Backstage Pass, which is our digital hub for all of these amazing thought leaders, industry disruptors, and business activists. And then, like I said, with lots of inspo actually from Ms. Green herself, I finally went around, got my tush in order, and we have launched a podcast, and it is called Money, Sex, and Politics. Only second to, what was it, Politics, Sex, and Bacon? Something along those lines that Abby, bacon first always. By the way, Abby has a son called Bacon. I just want you to all know that. Nickname Bacon. Henry Bacon, is it? Anyways, Money, Sex, and Politics. You can have bacon on the side if you like. I don't like bacon at all. But the podcast drops tomorrow. We dig into conversations about, if you can guess, money, sex, and politics. So here's the link to check out more of the spaces that we are creating at LBI. And boy, oh boy, I don't think I've had enough caffeine, or maybe I've had too much today because I'm just running on fumes, but I'm thrilled to be here. So thanks for tuning in. And tomorrow night, let me put that link one more time. Somewhere over here, that one-year digital dance party. Pow, pow! All right. Well, thanks for tuning in.